Hello, are you ready for the next shelf in my 3 years in booktube celebratory view through my books, all my books, and being slightly radical about throwing out the odd one or two, ideally more, who knows. We're looking at a top shelf here. This is now in fiction. It's actually starting to move towards my humour and comedy, which is quite key for me. Let's just dig in. Okay. First one, probably not too many of you have, the Penguin book of women's humour. Nice and thick, covering lots, edited by Regina Barreca. And it includes people such as Margaret Atwood, Judah Barnes, so it's not necessarily people who are totally comedians. You've also got Tallulah Bankhead, Anne Bradstreet, Gwendolyn Brooks, Emily Bronte from Wuthering Heights, believe it or not, Rita Mae Brown, Roz Chast, of course, from The New Yorker, Lucille Clifton, the poet, Emily Dickinson, Annie Dillard, Phyllis Diller, of course, Maria Edgeworth, George Eliot, Nora Ephron, Zsa Zsa Gabor, Elizabeth Gaskell, Stella Gibbons from Cold Comfort Farm, of course, which we'll come to in a moment, and Michelle's, Whoopi Goldberg, one-liners, Jermaine Greer, Judy Holliday, Zora Neale Hurston, Erica Jong, Pamela Katz, Jean Kerr, Fran Lebowitz, of course, Doris Lessing, How I Finally Lost My Heart, that would be an interesting one, Phyllis McGinley, Edna St Vincent Millay, Marianne Moore, and so goes on, Gilda Radner playing the fool, Gertrude Stein, Mae West, Rebecca West, 620 odd pages. So if you ever meet someone who says women don't have a sense of humour, or they can't be funny or witty, this would be a good book to kindly blow them over the head with. I like the back picture where the editor's doing sort of Groucho Marx, so definitely a book to keep. More humour. Robert Benchley, Lost and Found. 39 Prodigal Pieces by Robert Benchley, which the American humorist, of course, and good friend of Dorothy Parker. And to be honest, it is quite dated and I haven't gone through it in detail. They also have some nice little cartoons, but I knew it was classic humour and it was one to have, so one to read. Not humour, To Kill a Mockingbird, Harper Lee. I was actually started a little book club with some friends and one of them mentioned this book and we read it, and she said she later regretted it deeply because it was one of her very favourite ever books, and she suddenly thought, wait a minute, I'm going to sit in a room with other people who may not like it and they'll just tear it apart and it will be this favourite book of mine. But all went well, we enjoyed it. To Kill a Mockingbird. Now, have you heard of Tom Holt? Flying Dutch. Humorous fantasy, which is quite a narrow field, I guess you could say. And this one is about the Flying Dutchman who is condemned to eternal living but has happened to take out a life insurance policy before he became immortal. And so a very organised lady working in insurance is given the task of trying to undo this pickle, because if the Flying Dutchman actually cashes in his cheque, the whole of the known world will collapse financially. So kind of fun. Not too long, and definitely one you're at risk of laughing out loud. Less laughing out loud, Virginia Woolf, To the Lighthouse. I got this as one of these beautiful little covers, and the way they're done and I got this at an art exhibition, so of course that's going to be a favourite thing. But I have yet to, I think, go through it all. But there, it's not too long to read. So much Virginia Woolf I have to read. And when I have read, I've liked. Next, one of my very favourite books, so much so that I know for a fact that I have 2 copies at least. The Enchanted April, Elizabeth von Arnim. One of these books that is delightful to read. It's just delightful. And it is about a group of women who start off very kind of downtrodden and not necessarily very happily married, and they take a holiday castle together in Italy, and just how they unwind and come to look at their lives differently and get freer and enjoy life more is just a joy. It really is. I came across it through the television adaptation, so by Channel 4. So if anybody's someday banging on about how books are always better than television, actually, if it's adapted really well, it's good. So I love this book. It's one you could really give to anybody. Okay. Spike Milligan. We are very close to the edges of the humour, just kind of gone across into the fiction books, which is my bookshelves, as they are. This is The Essential, Spike Milligan, and has got his little quote, "I told you I was ill," which they actually put in his tombstone because that's what he wanted put on it. And it's got examples from so many different kinds of things that he wrote. The foreword is by Eddie Izzard, who of course was a huge fan. It's got Gunshow scripts, it's got poems on the Ning Nang Nong where the cows go bong and the monkeys all say boo, because he wrote a lot of humorous poetry, fun absurdity ones for his kids as they grew up, and he was a doting dad. Pacoon we'll come to in a moment. His great novel set in Ireland, very humorous. Lots of this book are set out, as you would imagine, for scripts, radio scripts or drama scripts, but also little bits. And he does drawings, which are humorous, especially good whenever he turns to doing his, I must give one of these poems a read for Poetry Thursday. Actually, that would be quite fun. I mean, his whole life kind of was turned upside down by World War II, obviously, but he definitely was going to always be creative, and I think he had an interest in art, and who knows but that would not have happened if he'd had that opportunity. Okay, Stephen Fry, Paperweight. A very young Stephen Fry, as you can see, and he wrote lots of little articles on lots of different things, little essays, 450 odd pages. His thoughts on the world, very funny, very insightful, and he invented a character who is fantastic called Professor Trefusis, who's just this really old professor from Oxbridge, and what he is, Trefusis on hating Oxford, and so it goes on. This doddering person who is waspish, is described as. So here's a little at random. This is a quote from one of these pieces about Trefusis, in Trefusis's own voice. "Crete is a wine to be sipped with pleasure only for short periods. Without, it must be said, the steadying influence of the BBC's World Service to keep a rein upon my reason, my stay on that incomparable island would, I make no doubt, have been insupportable." Fun. Stephen Fry. And of course he knew what old professors at Oxbridge could sound like, as he had studied there. Okay. Pacoon, the book itself. Spike Milligan, that's one of his drawings of the main character. It's his kind of gifted cartoonishness. and it's all about drawing them up on Ireland to divide between the north of Ireland and the south. So that's quite political, but done in a really amazing way. More humour, brace yourselves, people. Flann O'Brien, Miles Before Miles. Flann O'Brien was the writing name for, his real name was Brian O'Nolan, and he also wrote under the name Miles McGopaleen, born in 1911. You may have heard of his novel At Swim Two Birds, or The Third Policeman. These are articles that he wrote that were printed in the Irish Times, probably. And he was hilarious, because he would write these really absurd humour things. Lots of jokes. And he wrote a humorous one called The Christine Lawn, which was in Irish, so he made jokes in Irish as well. If you like absurd humour, you need to check him out. I'm less keen on his novels, it has to be said, but anyway. Okay, English as they come. Evelyn Waugh put out more flags. I've got to keep this. I bought it recently. It's not that large and heavy, doesn't take up much space. It's a 1943 edition, which is quite probably the first edition by the Book Club, 121 Charing Cross Street. Rather nicely, but it sits beautifully in the hand, and I've read it. It has some comedy scenes in it which you would want to go back to, that are just set pieces. You just think, oh, yes, classic. I'm standing too close to the camera. I'm alarming myself, so I'll stand a bit further back. Now, Busman's Honeymoon by Dorothy Sayers. Nice old copy. I read it. It was exciting to read. A love story with a detective interruptions, which it kind of is. So I'm not sure about keeping it. This is, yeah. I'll pick to one side. I'll not just stand here and waste your time. Okay. Must Stay Cool Comfort Farm. The kind of book you can pick up and read. They got the comic classic of Rural Life by Stella Gibbons. So it is basically doing satire on novels that are incredibly gothic and where characters are very, very rural, and they all have strange names and accents and do very strange things. So yeah, really good fun. Worth reading. Look how small it is. You know that your suitcase needs this for your summer holidays. Right. The Blue Castle, Ella Montgomery. An Utter Joy, beautiful old book, and a wonderful tale of somebody who starts off being utterly put down in the world, and then how unusual circumstances happen, and as she goes on, and you could say, of course, it's a bit of a journey, but that's such a cliche, but her life starts to change in very interesting ways. William's Crowded Hours by Rick Milcrompton. Rick Milcrompton wrote some stories about a little boy called William, who liked to be a little boy. He liked to be in mud up to his eyeballs. He had a dog that was a mongrel and jumped around everywhere. And he lived in an age whenever little boys were meant to be really quiet and good and so forth. And that was the opposite of what he was like. Fantastic, energetic drawings. And beautifully read if you ever want to get an audiobook. Beautifully read by Martin Jarvis. This is the boy himself, you know, the teacher. He's the boy that always has the hair slightly odd and the socks are up and down and he's got holes in his clothes almost. It's a wonderful world in which nothing is ever really dangerously going to happen, but there are lots of adventures, and there's lots of adults who are incredibly serious, and you just lightens the mood by the way he just goes about things with a child's perspective, and thinks adult ways of doing things are incredibly boring, which sometimes adults think as well, strangely enough. Okay, this is an old, very battered paper copy, written by Crompton William. So let's just say William and the Cannibal. William the Cannibal. Oh yes, of course, he would be, of course, acting out the part of the cannibal with his little gang of friends here, boys. More boys' adventure, fun. Bunter, Billy Bunter, have you heard of that series? Frank Richards, Bunter and the Secret of the Scarab. And Billy Bunter, the Bold. And Bunter's main aim in life is to eat lots. He's always trying to get the food that the other boys have pulled together for any reason at all. So yeah, it's life at a boys' school a long time ago. But yeah, it's kind of fun. It's that kind of scrapes situation where unusual situations, unlikely ones happen and are hilarious. And once again, like William, you have that quorum of very, very, very serious adults in the shape of teachers and tutors, and then this gang of boys who are not interested really in being told to do Latin grammar and Greek. Oh, books are falling down on me. It's a judgment from on high. Okay, let's see what we got here. We have another Ella Montgomery, Jane of Lantern Hill. Actually, I love the colour green of this. It's kind of very yellowy and yet greeny and soft. Faded tremendously, of course, from what it would have been, but lovely. I love this print as well. It's kind of Times Roman on steroids kind of thing. It's just beautiful. The books are lovely. Okay, more recently humorous. David Lodge, The British Museum is Falling Down, which is set in sort of the 60s, where the British Museum happens to be where the reading room still is. It's since moved, of course, to St Pancras, the British Library there. And it's a little world of doing postgraduate reading in English. And I'm sure some of the watchers in BookTube will know that world, have been through that world, or are indeed going through it. This was recommended by a librarian who said that a lot of the chapters in the book are actually pastiches of famous writers. So if you think you can spot literature, particular writers, see if you can spot which chapters are satirising which famous literature writer. Okay, this one keeps cropping up with everywhere. Alan Bennett, The Uncommon Reader. There's a reason for that. It's really tiny, quick to read, enlightening, and it's all about the joy of reading. In it, Queen Elizabeth II, who is now, of course, the late Queen Elizabeth II, trots around with her corgis, accidentally comes across a reading van, a library van, and starts to read, and how it changes and affects her life. Another woman humorist, Lynn Truss, Making the Cat Laugh, lots of columns from newspapers that she wrote. She's very, very funny. She is good. An older humorist, Sidney Smith. You can kind of get his vintage when you look at the photograph of him. And he was describing how he had been sent to live and work as a clergyman in a rural parish, and he described it as being 12 miles from a lemon, hence this title. But he also did his job well, managed to keep on the right side of the rich and famous, was very entertaining and extremely witty. But he also had a woman who was his butler, which is pretty far ahead of his time. Let me see if there's any date. Jane Austen is thought to have based Henry Tilner in Northanger Abbey on him, and G.K. Chesterton was another of his admirers. So, very funny. Okay, more boy books. Biggles Learns to Fly, Captain W.E. Johns. I enjoyed reading Biggles books whenever I grew up. and adventure and the different places he went in the world, and the friendship between him and his comrades. Peter Cook and Dudley Moore, Dud and Pete, the Dagenham dialogues. So scripts from a classic comedy show, which in a classic short-sighted move, the BBC scrubbed lots of these recordings, even though at that time they were paying the performers quite well, and Cook and Moore said, please let us buy the expensive videotape on which they were recorded, don't record over them. And the BBC went, no, we have to save our pennies and pounds and shillings. Every now and then a little bit more emerges of recordings, and let's hope there's many more to come. Obviously humour, dates, wit and satire, but just a joy. And if you haven't already seen them, do try and get one of them where the two of them were dressed up like kind of workmen in these little raincoats and caps talking about high culture. It's very fun. Very, very fun. Longitude. The true story of a lone genius who solved the greatest scientific problem of his time, by Dava Sobel. Let me just say, somebody else in the house bought this, and I'll have to refer this to that person. Here you go. These are the wannabes now, New Kids on the Block, Anthony Trollope. Yes, he's at the Small House at Allington, which apparently has been described as one of the most perfect English novels. Everyman's Library, pretty good. Love this. It's kind of sturdy without being utterly heavy. Having said that, I got another book by Anthony Trollope, which was published by them, and one chapter didn't have the final full stop. And that's when I discovered that I was a pedant because I couldn't stand the book. It was like the chapter never ended, and I just ended up ripping it up and using it for art things because I just couldn't cope. Small House at Allington. I'm not sure that I will continue to keep that because classic books are available everywhere in the library. Trollope is immense fun. I find him addictive. If I start a Trollope, usually that's Anthony Trollope. I have to finish the book, but widely available, and yeah, so I'm not sure. Okay, Jane Austen, A Life by Claire Tomalin. I was going to say nothing sensational in the book, but of course Jane Austen managed to not seem to have any skeletons in her closet, and also told her sister, unfortunately, to burn her letters, which unfortunately Cassandra did, because I'm pretty sure there would be nothing devastating or shocking in them. But this is a very, very simple telling of her life, and it's an interesting one. Right. If you're wanting to get to grips with her life, it would be a good one to start with. It's not trying to be high academic for researchers in literature, it's for the reader, the general reader. Women and the Art of Brilliant Speaking, How to Own the Room by Viv Groskop. I thought it would be better than it was. I think I'm going to just let somebody else have it. I haven't read it. But in looking for this book, I came across one of my all-time ever favourite books, which is The Daily Rituals, which is about how creative women manage to make the time to do their creative work. Life without that book would be so difficult. Right, here we go. More. Okay, Emma by Jane Austen. I read Jane Austen books again and again, for sure. No problem worth keeping. Problem whether I should keep it or not, rather. It will continue to have life for me. Jane Austen, Persuasion. Jane Austen, Pride and Prejudice. The Mothership. Jane Austen, Mansfield Park. So, if you're not sure about reading Jane Austen, if you never have started, BookTube is full of channels of people who absolutely love Jane Austen. I will tell you exactly why and all the best points. I'm going to assume you know already. Right, Northanger Abbey we're missing, so therefore let's have that with the weirdest cover of all. I mean, a kind of Picasso. This is what you get when you buy second-hand books. It's the look of the drawer. And humour again, the bumper Beachcomber, edited by Richard Ingrams. Richard Ingrams used to be the editor of Private Eye. And Beachcomber was a humorist who kept a column in an English newspaper and was hilarious and extremely absurd in what he did. And this has been a work of love to say this is someone, Beachcomber is somebody who is no longer famous but deserves to be, and has gathered together a lot of his works. His real name was J.B. Morton, but he wrote under the writing name of Beachcomber. Oh, bumper Beachcomber's got different. This is like a little dictionary. Humility. A man who pretends he is no good at games when really he is an excellent player has true humility. Ideas. Dangerous things, as in the sentence, putting ideas into his head. Idyll. A photograph of a crowded reach of the Thames, each punt having its gramophone in full blast, is described as an idyll. Oh, festival, what's that? 1 week's cricket at Scarborough or 1 month's Wagner at Beirut. Ballet, acrobatics accompanied by pretentious music. Ballet, Russian, more fantastic acrobatics accompanied by uglier and more pretentious music. Dictionary for today. So, yeah, it's very English. Right, last couple of books. Brace yourselves. A good rip-roaring adventure story, The 39 Steps and The Powerhouse by John Buchan. I came to 39 Steps fairly recently, and it is a very dramatic story. You will not be bored. You may roll your eyes and go, that's a rather far-fetched story, but it's interesting. And really, how many novels can you say it off nowadays, really? And finally, Virginia Woolf, Somebody Called Mrs. Dalloway. A little short, but incredibly influential. It's a vintage classics version. You can see lots of ink has been spilt over that book, and of course Virginia Woolf is worth spilling ink over. And oh, how about we've got a book, Biggles of the Camel Squadron, another Biggles book, to end that shelf of classic and slightly humorous books. And I hope you've enjoyed seeing them. Maybe it's reminded you of some things you've read in the past, because some of these books are really quite old. So that's shelf number 2. Bye for now.